We just witnessed one of the greatest NBA finals in recent memory. I know the series only lasted 5 games, but don't let that fool you. The series featured impossible comebacks, record-breaking performances, incredible physicality, and some of the most clutch plays you'll ever see. By the time it was over, history had been made. But before we break it down, let's set the stage. Going into the 2025-26 season, the Spurs were viewed as a decent young team, but not a serious title threat. Analysts were high on Wemby, but they weren't sold on the rest of the roster. ESPN projected them to win just 40 games, but the Spurs proved to be much better than advertised. They took the league by storm, getting 62 wins, securing the number 2 seed in the West, and owning the defending champion Thunder throughout the regular season. They looked primed for a deep playoff run, but they would be quickly met with adversity. After taking Game 1 against the Blazers, disaster struck. Wemby suffered a concussion and was ruled out indefinitely. Without their superstar, the Spurs dropped Game 2 and suddenly the series was tied at 1-1. For most teams, losing their best player would have been the end of the season, but the Spurs were resilient. Everyone stepped up in Game 3 to go up 2-1 in the series. Then Wemby returned to Game 4, helping to seal the deal as San Antonio got the victory and finished the Blazers off in Game 5. Wemby brought his game to another level against the Wolves as the Spurs won in 6 games and advanced to the conference finals. Now they would face the Thunder. It was a physical, brutal, hard-fought 7-game series. In the final game, it would all come down to the last few minutes. With the score close, it was anyone's game, but Wemby and the Spurs made key plays down the stretch to close it out. Now the Spurs are in the finals, where Wemby could win his first title in only just his 3rd NBA season. Unlike the Spurs, the Knicks were expected to be here. At the start of the season, they looked like the top dog in the East, but inconsistent play throughout the regular season led to doubts. By the start of the playoffs, many were calling the Knicks a pretender rather than a contender. And when New York fell behind 2-1 to the Hawks in the first round, the criticism got even louder. Was this team really built for a championship run, or were the Knicks about to suffer an embarrassing early playoff exit? Turns out, this was the wake-up call New York needed. Coach Brown made a crucial adjustment, getting Karl-Anthony Towns more heavily involved. Cat's precision passing from the high post unlocked New York's offense. Not only did they beat the Hawks, they go on to win their next 11 games in dominant fashion to get to the finals. 27 years later, the Knicks and Spurs meet again. In 1999, Tim Duncan and San Antonio crushed New York's championship dreams. Now a new Spurs superstar stands in the Knicks' way. For New York, this is a chance to win the franchise's first championship in more than a half a century. For Wemby and San Antonio, it's a chance to win the Spurs' first title since the Tim Duncan era, and maybe begin the next great NBA dynasty. 2 teams, 2 very different journeys, 1 championship. Game 1 of the finals was epic. The Knicks came out the gate swinging, allowing them to go up by 7 points early in the first quarter. But the Spurs would respond with a run of their own, which helped them to erase the deficit and go up by 8 points. Brunson was off to a brutal start. Not only were shots not falling, but he was coughing up the rock like crazy. Then came the moment that made Knicks fans gasp. Harrison Barnes fell on Brunson's leg, causing him to exit the game and limp to the locker room. This helped the Spurs to take control, going up by 10 late in the first quarter. With Brunson's sideline, the series appeared to be over when it barely had even begun. The Knicks had spent decades chasing this moment, and now just 1 quarter into the finals, it looked like it was slipping away. Brunson was in a ton of pain, but he wasn't about to let an injury ruin everything he had worked for. Not now, not with a championship on the line. So we toughed it out. Brunson returned in the second quarter and immediately knocked down big shots, helping New York to claw back into the game. By halftime, they trailed by only 7. Then in the third quarter, Victor Wembanyama erupted. Behind Wemby's brilliance, San Antonio built a 14-point lead in the third. They were fully in control, but anyone who thought the game was over hadn't watched the Knicks play. Karl-Anthony Towns' scoring, rebounding, and physicality sparked a furious comeback, helping the Knicks to tie their score by the end of the third. Early in the fourth quarter, it was the OG Anunoby show as he buried shot after shot, but the Spurs answered with tough shots of their own. Midway through the fourth, it was all tied up at 88-88. The game hung in the balance. It would all come down to who would deliver in the closing minutes, and fortunately for New York, they have Captain Clutch on their squad.
Stutter dribble, drives inside, Lamb backs again. Brunson looking. Brunson driving, Lamb shot is good. Bridges looks, back to Brunson. Corner 3 is up. On the drive, spins. Underneath, puts it up, puts it in.
Brunson dropped 13 points in the fourth quarter alone to seal the victory for the Knicks. They had stolen home court advantage, they led the series 1-0, and the dream of bringing a championship to New York City felt within reach. The Spurs understood the importance of Game 2, win and tie the series, or lose and face an 0-2 hole with the next 2 games in New York. Understanding the stakes, the Spurs started the game with a lot of energy. After a brutal Game 1, De'Aaron Fox found his rhythm, which helped San Antonio go up by 9 by the end of the first quarter. The Knicks were down, but they had been in this situation plenty of times before. Jalen Brunson couldn't buy a bucket, but Karl Anthony Towns was more than making up for it.
First quarter of Game 1, Towns catch and shoot, but did not lead the floor. Towns drives on Cornette, lays it in for the first time for the Knicks. Towns steps back and nails a shot. Towns drives inside and slams it home.
Tad had completely taken over. He was dominating the paint, controlling the glass, creating for his teammates, and perhaps most shocking of all, he was locking up Victor Wembanyama. He had 17 points at the half while holding Wemby to just 7. The Knicks were up by 4 at halftime and looked completely in control. Their success continued in the second half where both Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby were lighting it up. Midway through the fourth, the Knicks were up by 12 points. They appeared to be closing in on the win, but Wemby and Fox were determined to overcome the deficit.
Fox steps back, tries a three-pointer, it's good!
Your free throws to stop the clock or you're going to have to knock down some threes.
Fox gets in there, adjusts beautifully, and backs it all. Time score in this league for a lot of years. Up top for Wemby. Drives on Towns, leans in. Towns plays it well. Spins, layup, he backs it home!
Possession after possession, they chipped away at the lead and were now up by 1 point with just 57 seconds remaining. The Spurs had all the momentum, but now the Knicks had the ball and they knew exactly who to give it to.
Brunson on the drive, stops.
Brunson had struggled to hit shots all night, but he hit when it mattered the most. Now the game was tied, but with 37 seconds remaining, there was plenty of time left. The Spurs would ISO Wemby in the next play, but he would miss a contested pull-up. Brunson would fail to convert on the next play, and now the Spurs would have the ball back with 9 seconds left. A chance for a game winner was there.
Rebound, 12 seconds remaining. Stolen by Brunson and knocked down by Wemby. Brunson will shoot free throws with 9.5 remaining.
Turnover.
I also think they weren't totally clear on if they wanted a timeout or they... Castle inbound. Fox gets it. Bridges on him. 4 seconds. Fox to Wembanyama. Pulls up. Jumper. Won't go. Rebound taken by Vassell. It's over. It's over.
And just like that, the Knicks had stolen another one and were up 2-0 in the series. For Wemby, it was devastating. He had 29 points on the night, but in the most important possession of the game, he made the one mistake he couldn't afford to make. Now the Spurs were in a massive hole. For the Knicks, they had pulled off another gutsy win thanks to great teamwork, grittiness, and incredible shot making. With the next 2 games headed to Madison Square Garden, bringing a title to New York felt closer than ever. For the San Antonio Spurs, Game 3 was the definition of a must-win game. They were desperate to avoid going down 0-3, while the Knicks were determined to go up 3-0. That urgency was apparent from the opening tip, as the game quickly turned into a physical battle. The refs blew their whistles a few times, but plenty of contact was allowed to go uncalled. By halftime, it was the Knicks who were in control with a 7-point lead. In the third quarter, the Spurs dialed up the defensive intensity. They forced turnovers and converted them into fast breaks. This helped them go into the fourth quarter with a 1-point lead. Then Victor Wembanyama took over.
Alley-oop to Wembanyama. Perfect pass from Castle. Brunson extra pass. Off the bounce inside. Layup blocked by Wemby.
Now the Spurs had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. They appeared to be closing in on the win, but the Knicks didn't quit.
Bridges back to Brunson. He's got to put it up. Shot clock winding down. Shot is up. Shot is good.
Now the Knicks were only down by 5. The outcome of the game was very much up in the air. It would all come down to late game execution.
Shot clock winding down. Castle has to put it up. Towns, the point. Brunson drives on Harper. Steps back. 3-pointers up. It's good. Towns holding on to Wemby. Fox gets into the paint. Puts up jumper. Got it. De'Aaron Fox with a clutch bucket right there.
After getting outdueled in the clutch the previous 2 games, this time it was the Spurs that came out on top. Wemby was the star of the night, becoming just the second youngest player in NBA history to record at least 30 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists in an NBA Finals game. With the series now 2-1, the Spurs were right back in it. Game 4 would be the most pivotal game of the series. A Knicks win would give New York a commanding 3-1 lead. A Spurs win would tie the series. Both teams knew the stakes and came ready to play. In the first quarter, it was the Spurs that threw the first punch. They started off hot, which helped them to go up by 10 early in the first quarter. Things were already trending bad for New York, but then Cat picked up 2 early fouls, forcing him to go to the bench. Without Cat, things got out of hand for the Knicks. Their defense was sloppy, allowing the Spurs to get open looks from deep, but even well-defended shots were going in. By the end of the first quarter, the Spurs had increased their lead to 21 points, and in the second quarter, the onslaught continued.
Fox drives down, throws it up.
Not only were the Spurs dominating, but things also got chippy. After receiving a flagrant foul from Mitch, Wemby stated, "I'm in your head," and it certainly looked like he was. The Spurs would go up by as much as 29, and they had a 27-point lead by the half. It was the third largest halftime lead in NBA Finals history. The game appeared to be over. Fans turned their TVs off. Nearly everyone assumed San Antonio would cruise to an easy victory. But this Knicks team had spent the entire postseason proving they could survive impossible situations. Despite being down nearly 30, they remained positive. And in the second half, they came out with more energy. Not only were Brunson and OG going off, but the Spurs had gone ice cold. By the end of the third quarter, a 27-point halftime lead had shrunk to 15. The Spurs knew they just had a terrible quarter, but they weren't going to let the lead slip away without a fight. They went on a run that pushed the lead back up to 21 points in the fourth quarter. They just needed a strong finish. But once again, the Knicks would respond.
Shot clock winding down. Towns off the bounce. Step back. Puts up the three. It's good. Towns has it. Right side Alvarado off the bounce. Corner three, Anunoby. Bang! 5. Brunson fires up a three. Pops it in! Stunner dribble. Drives inside. Goes up. Floaters up. It's good! The Knicks take the lead with 1:22 remaining.
The Knicks were pulling off an incredible comeback. Now with a minute remaining, they had a 1-point lead. They were seconds away from pulling off a miracle, but 3 possessions later, a missed box out would lead to Stephon Castle getting fouled on a putback. He drained 2 free throws to give San Antonio the lead back. The Knicks needed a bucket and made sure to give it to Brunson.
Side pulls back, kicks it out the corner. Brunson gets it back. Runs another drive, the floater's up. Shot.
Then came the play Knicks fans will never forget.
That's a chance to get it. Fox has it inside, blocked by Anunoby.
With the season on the line, OG delivered the biggest defensive play of the series, but the Knicks were still down by 1 point and needed a bucket.
101. Brunson gets it, fires up a three. Shot no good. The chip, it's gone. It's gone.
OG Anunoby made another incredibly clutch play, tipping the ball in to give NY the lead back with a second left. But it still wasn't over. The Knicks needed a stop.
Harper lobs it inside. Castle hasn't lost it. That's it. It's over.
Until today, no team had come back from down 29 in the finals. But the Knicks were proving that anything's possible. It was the greatest comeback in finals history. In Game 5, the Knicks knew the job wasn't done. They were looking to finish the series while the Spurs were fighting to keep their season alive. They were back on their home floor in San Antonio where they fed off the home crowd, helping them to get off to a strong start. Early in the game, Wemby was putting on a defensive clinic.
Right at the cell. Shot blocked by Wemby. Didn't beat his resistance in the lane. Now goes right at Wemby. Flips it up top. Blocked again. And 5 on the 24. Goes right again. Wemby shot. Blocked again. Got a piece of it.
Wemby was blocking everything in sight, helping the Spurs to get out to a 15-point lead in the second quarter. With the Knicks unable to get their offense going, Brunson knew he needed to assert himself.
Just tips it out to Brunson. Brunson a three-pointer. That's good. It's now the latest to chase Brunson. Brunson gets inside. Pull jump shot. Rattles it in. Jab step. Double team. Jumper. It's good.
Brunson got the Knicks back into the game, helping New York to cut the lead to just 5 by halftime. The third quarter would prove to be a stalemate. Both teams went on runs, but neither team could create any separation, leaving the Knicks trailing 7 entering the fourth quarter. With the Spurs still ahead entering the fourth and the Knicks offense struggling for most of the night, San Antonio appeared to be on the verge of extending the series and forcing a Game 6. But Jalen Brunson refused to quit.
Brunson without hesitation. He starts. Brunson off the bounce, gets inside. Leans in right-handed, he backs it home. Brunson looks, Brunson drives, Brunson shoots. Ties the game. Brunson gets away from Castle. The floater's up and good. Jalen Brunson with another answer.
Brunson scored 15 points in the fourth quarter and drained the clutch floater to give NY a 2-point lead, but the Knicks still needed to play defense. Seconds later, Dylan Harper drove coast to coast on the fast break, but OG made a perfect contest that forced Harper to miss what would have been a game-tying layup. After some clutch free throws, it was over. The New York Knicks were champions.
Knicks fans, this is not a dream. Your long wait has ended. Go ahead and cry. After 53 years, the Knicks are finally NBA champions once again.
The finals MVP would rightfully go to Jalen Brunson. He pulled an absolute carry job, scoring nearly half of his team's 94 points with 45 of his own. It was the most points ever in the finals by a Knick. He also tied Michael Jordan for the most points ever scored on the road in a series-clinching finals game. After delivering one of the greatest finals performances in franchise history and helping to end a 53-year championship drought, Jalen Brunson has cemented himself as a New York Knicks legend. What a finals. It's interesting because the Spurs seem to be in control of most of these games, but they just let every single one slip away. You know, they're a very young and talented team. I think they're going to learn from this, and they've got a great chance to get back to the finals next year. And as for the Knicks, wow, what a hell of a run. You know, they were very inconsistent throughout the regular season, and then in the playoffs, they flipped the switch. They not only won the championship, they had one of the most dominant title runs in league history. Over the course of the playoffs, the Knicks went 16-3, with most of their wins being blowouts. And if you're a Knicks fan, I think you should get excited. This team, I don't think is going to just be one and done. They've got a great shot at being back-to-back champions and competing for titles for years with how young the core is. All these guys are in their prime. They just got to run it back. But that's going to be it for me, and now I want to hear from you guys. What did you think of the finals? Do you think that the Spurs will eventually win a championship with Wemby? Do you think that the Knicks will repeat as champions in 2027? Let me see your thoughts down below in the comment section. We also got to give Jalen Brunson his flowers. He went from second-round pick to leading the Knicks to their first championship in over a half a century. To see how he pulled it off, check out this video right here.